Judging is a very important role in competitions, and I see it done incorrectly quite a bit. This video will hopefully help people judge correctly based on the WCA regulations. First off, it's important to know the regulations pretty well before going to a comp, even if you're not judging. Although I go through most of the regs needed for judging this video, I would still recommend looking at the regs for minor things I might miss, and knowing the regs is generally a good thing to know. The link to the regulations will be in the description. The first thing you would do as a judge is receive a cube cover, a cube, and a scorecard from the runner. First, quickly check if this cube is solved already, since it's a common mistake for the runner to bring up a solved puzzle to the competing area. If it is, give everything back to the runner. If not, set the cube and the cover over it on the table in front of the timer while making sure the scrambled puzzle is not visible to the competitor. Make sure the timer is turned on, reset, and ready. If the competitor is using a camera, make sure its monitor is not visible to the competitor. Have the stopwatch ready and ask the competitor if they are ready. When they indicate that they are, lift the cover and start the timer on the stopwatch at the same time. They have 1 minute to get ready, and if they're not ready in that time period, it solves the DNS. At this point, the attempt has started. Make sure the competitor isn't cheating by moving the cube, interacting with the camera, or receiving any help from anyone or anything. The result is a DNF if this happens. When the stopwatch hits 8 seconds, say 8 seconds. When it hits 12 seconds, say 12 seconds. These calls are very important for helping the competitor control their inspection time, so make sure not to forget to make these calls or say them too early or late. If they do start before a call, you can just reset the stopwatch as they have already started the solve. Don't reset the stopwatch until they started the actual solve, as the solve officially starts after they lift their hands from the timer. This also means that testing the timer is not allowed during inspection. If they start between 15 and 17 seconds, the solve will have a +2 penalty. If they go over 17 seconds however, the result is DNF. During inspection, the competitor might mention seeing the scramble before or receiving a blatant misscramble. The competitor should do the solve anyway, just in case, but make sure to ask a delegate to confirm if any error occurred during scrambling, to give them an extra attempt. Take note of their timer start. Make sure that they place the cube on the mat. If not, it's a +2 penalty. Make sure they start with their fingers with their palms face down and on the side of the timer closest to them. If not, the solve gets a +2 penalty. Make sure they're not touching the cube after they put their hands on the timer. If they do so, it is a +2 penalty. Make sure that the timer is running after the competitor starts to solve. A common error is that the cuber accidentally stops the timer too quickly after starting it, and they get a result under a second. If the time is 0.06 or less, the solve qualifies for a resolve. If not, the solve is a DNF, unless the cuber proves that it was a timer malfunction. If the time is 0.00 however, it is likely that the cuber did not start the timer at all, and the time is a DNF. During the solve, make sure they're not getting assistance from anyone or anything. People helping a cuber pick up pieces from a pop counts as assistance. Some other things to look out for is reassembling the cube into an easier state to solve, or corner twisting more than one corner at a time. Doing any of these will result in a DNF. If there's a time limit, be sure to stop the cuber at this limit and record a DNF. As a judge, try to pay attention to making sure the competitor is following the regs. Cubing during their attempt or talking to others may distract the competitor, so avoid doing such things. Take note of the timer stop. If the competitor does not fully release the puzzle before stopping the timer, it's DNF. If you're sure they made no moves however, it will be a +2. The timer should be stopped similarly to the way it was started, with palms down. They can stop with their palms however, but make sure they don't stop with their hands facing up or to the side. Check if the puzzle is completely solved. If the puzzle is one move away from being solved, it is a +2. If it is more than one move away, it's a DNF. If the layer is not fully aligned, do not touch the cube. The position of the cube is the position the misaligned layer is closest to. If it's hard to judge which position the layer is closest to, you can ask a delegate or an experienced cuber to check which position the cube is in. If the competitor touches the puzzle before you confirm it's solved, it is a DNF. If you are sure no moves were done, the solve will be a +2. If the competitor drops the cube in their lap, this counts as them touching the cube. After this, write down the time onto the scorecard legibly. Be very sure this is the correct time. Sometimes the display timer shows a different time from the stack mat timer, so it's usually the safest to use the stack mat. Writing down the third decimal on the scorecard is not necessary, but there is no harm in doing so. If the competitor resets the timer before you fully recorded the result, the solve gets a DNF, even if you remember what the time was or if there's video evidence. If there are any +2 penalties before the solve, add them together and write that number first. Write the addition symbol and the time shown on the timer. Write the addition symbol again with the +2 penalties added together that were gotten during or after the solve. Finally, write the equal sign and do the math. Any 0+ or +0 should not be written on the scorecard. That means if there are no penalties, simply just write the time on the timer. If the time was a DNF, write DNF. In rounds with a cumulative time limit, write the time as well as the DNF. If there is no E1, simply just sign your name in a space for judge. Make sure that the competitor signs as well. after you have recorded the result. If they sign before you write the result, this solves the DNF. If they do not accept the recorded result for some reason, such as disagreeing with a +2, call over a delegate to resolve the dispute. If any penalties were caused by the competitor not knowing the rules due to inexperience, call a delegate over and they can decide if they get a replacement attempt. Finally, put the cube in the cube box with the scorecard and hand it off to the runner. If the solve you judge was their last solve and they're done, give them the cube and give the cube cover with the scorecard to the runner. They'll give you another cube and the cycle continues. There are a few events though where judging is a bit different. Clock is judged almost the same, other than a few things. First off, moving the pins up or down counts as turning the puzzle. This means that you should be very careful setting the clock down under the cover standing up, and making sure that it doesn't fall over or you don't move the pins. When inspecting, the competitor may not move the pins either. If they do, it counts as moving the puzzle and they get a DNF. When setting the puzzle down, the competitor must put the clock on the mat in a standing position. If they don't, they get a DNF. When they finish solving the puzzle, however, it can be put on the mat face down. To check if it's solved, check to see if all the arrows point to the 12 o'clock position on both sides. There is no +2 penalty for being one move off, and instead, any other position other than a solved clock is a DNF. OH and Phi are also judged similarly. For one-handed, they can inspect with both hands if they choose to do so. Similarly, for feet, they are also allowed to inspect with their hands if they choose to do so. In Phi, however, they must start and stop the timer with their feet. During the solve, feet solvers can only use their feet, and OH solvers can only use one hand, and not switching between hands. For both events, the cuber is not allowed to use any other body part to assist in solving. These rules still apply for corner twisting and fixing pops. Finally, for blind events, don't lift the cube cover if they show that they are ready. The competitor will start the timer normally and lift the cover themselves. While memorizing, make sure they are not interacting with anyone or anything, including taking notes. They also cannot move the puzzle at all, similar to the inspection phase of a normal solve. Before they move the puzzle, they must first put on the blindfold. They are allowed to remove the blindfold to return to the memorization phase if they do not turn the puzzle. When they do turn the puzzle with the blindfold on, place an opaque object between the competitor and the puzzle. In a way they cannot see the puzzle even if the blindfold was off. Don't put this object between them and the puzzle until the competitor has made the first move to the puzzle. Keep this object there until the solve is completed, and try to make sure the object does not touch the cuber. If decided beforehand, they can use something like a music stand as this opaque object. After solving, the competitor will then put the puzzle down and stop the timer. They are allowed to remove the blindfold before stopping the timer, but they cannot touch the cube afterwards. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, or read up on the regulations yourself. Most importantly, if you have any questions during a competition, be sure to ask your local delegate. So I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one.